Our population is expected to double by 2050. That is an incredible rate of growth, and it will put huge pressure on our cities. Melbourne and Sydney will have around 8 million people each, and it will be much harder to get around from your home to your work, say. To make it worse, many jobs in the outer suburbs, in manufacturing for example, are drying up, so people there will spend even more time in traffic going to jobs which are increasingly in the inner city. These are problems raised this week by Labor's spokesman for Infrastructure and Transport, Anthony Albanese, now also Labor's Shadow Minister for Cities. Thanks for joining me.
Good to be with you, Andrew.
Look, before we get to some of your ideas about coping with this doubling of our population, like very fast rail, public transport, more investment, etc., etc., with the problems this growth is causing and the huge costs, why are we increasing our population at such a dramatic rate in the first place? Is it worth it?
Well, look, it's happening, Andrew, and there are advantages, of course, of a larger population. Larger population makes, for example, public transport more viable. It's a matter of making sure that it doesn't happen by accident. That's why projects like the Regional Rail Link right here in Victoria, that's making a big difference in Western Melbourne, but also making the regional cities of Bendigo, Ballarat and Geelong function much better and get that access to the city of Melbourne.
No, look, but my point is we aren't getting this massive population influx, particularly through immigration, just to make public transport more useful. It's why are we doing it in the first place? Because it comes at a big social and financial cost.
But you have to also look at the ageing of the population, Andrew. If we don't have growth in terms of we've had our rate of birth our birth rate's been increasing in recent times. That's a good thing. We need more people of working age. Otherwise, we're going to have an unsustainable population, whatever the figure, because of the ageing of the population. So it is going to grow. Sydney and Melbourne are anticipated to grow to 8 million by 2050. Wow. So it's a matter of making sure that we get it right. At the moment, my concern is that the growth in jobs, there's a disconnect between growth in jobs and growth in population of where they're occurring. So you're having drive-in, drive-out suburbs without people having access to work or even community infrastructure. So we need to make sure that we get that right.
Well, I want to get into some of your ideas just a second, but just sticking with this bit. See, one problem caused by mass immigration is that increasingly immigration is looking like colonisation. It's different from the days when your parents and mine came out here. And certain communities are forming enclaves with an us and them mentality, which is sort of playing out in this, what we're seeing now. Does that concern you at all? You know, is our growth in population running ahead of our capacity to adapt?
Well, I am concerned that you have, in the outer suburbs, for example, release of housing without thinking about where are those people going to work, where are they get kids going to go to school.
That wasn't my question. My question is about the enclave mentality.
If you look at my speech on Wednesday at the National Press Club, one of the things I spoke about was inclusive cities, making sure that we actually have diversity in our suburbs, that we can't define who we are by just looking at a postcode.
Like saying Lakemba and that's Middle Eastern. Yeah, because some of your members, of course, you know, Tony Burke, they're representing seats with 20% plus Muslim voters. Now, I would have thought that sort of clumping is not actually healthy. You're not getting the mix.
Well, I look at my electorate and my suburb of Marrickville where I live. I have neighbours who are Christian, Muslim, Jewish, of different ethnic backgrounds. There's harmony. There's no dominant group. I think that's ideal. That's harmonious.
I tend to agree with you. But when you get seats of 20 plus, say, of one ethnicity or one religious faith in this case, do you think that's healthy?
Look, I don't think... I think diversity is really important, both in terms of religion, ethnicity, also class. I've opposed the sell-off of public housing at Millers Point, because if you take that in Sydney, if you take that to its logical conclusion, you'll sell off all social housing in any area that is not poor, basically. It's a good thing to have that social mix. That's important, that people grow up not in communities whereby there's largely everyone's on welfare or assistance, that you have that mix and diversity in the community. I think it's very important. And I think Australia can be a microcosm for the world in these intolerant times of harmony, different people of different backgrounds living together with respect for each other.
So fewer Lakemba type of things and just try to spread the...
Well, that is what has tended to happen. If you look at my same community, the Italians came and the Greeks came and settled there, then they've dispersed. I'm sure that will happen.
I don't know, there's
with
a
other
critical mass
communities
factor,
as
though,
well.
as you know, Anthony. There's a critical mass factor that I think is different from before. But look, quickly before we run out of time, on your proposals, we've got this growing cities. You're creating a number of... You've put out a number of suggestions, like very fast trains to Melbourne to Brisbane, $100 billion, so we get cities in the interior to take off the pressure. Another one was more people on motorcycles and scooters. You said that 10% more people on motorcycles would cut congestion by 40%. Is that a viable proposition in Australia?
It's extraordinary. Well, there are 700,000 people ride motorbikes and scooters in this country. It's happening. You've had a 25% increase in sales just in the last couple of years. So it's not a major component. There's a couple of paragraphs in the speech, but it is an element. And here in Melbourne, of course, we see facilities being made available in terms of parking to encourage motorcycle and scooter use as opposed to cars.
And you say more public transport, which has always been Labor's dream. But the problem with that, of course, in our huge cities, you can go from where you are into the city, but going side to side is much harder.
But that's why you need to do that as well. That's why we wanted to fund the Parramatta-Epping rail link in Sydney. You need those north-south corridors. You need an interconnected transport system that has public transport, roads, but also deals with moving freight as well as moving people. And it's got to be integrated. At the moment...
We're a car society. Let's face facts.
We are a car society in terms of our regional cities. Australia will continue to use the car, but the truth is that many people need public transport to get to and from work, particularly our CBDs don't function unless we can deal with public transport.
In part because of this huge immigration. But listen, at least you have delivered a policy, which is terrific. Bill Shorten, though, has adopted the small target strategy, and we haven't actually seen many policies. Should Labor be giving more policies like you've just delivered?
Well, look, we're just 1 year into a 3-year term, and Bill was very supportive of my release of this policy. I think you'll see progressively the alternative options rolled out.
Is that what you want to see?
Over the next couple of years. Absolutely.
No, not this couple of years, as in now. Look, I just think, you see, I think, Anthony, what Labor's done is, under Bill, has been a block, defined by no, being negative. You've now come out being positive. Is it time for that switch?
Well, I think you will see it, and an effective opposition has to hold the government to account, but it also has to be in the business of ideas. And one of my criticisms of the current government was that they had a plan to get into government, they didn't have a plan to govern. We need to be better than that, and we need to start preparing policies, getting out there, getting engaged in ideas. I've set up a committee involving the business community and the sector to engage on these policy ideas, and they're all happy to participate.
Let's see if your colleagues follow suit. And just quickly before we go, are you in the leadership hunt? I asked because you did run before, but I was struck by this incident in Question Time where Bill Shorten, your leader, gets up to ask a question and you virtually shoulder him out instead.
Well, I was going to give the call to the Leader of the Opposition, but he's just been pushed out of the way. The member for Grayndler.
Will you be pushing Bill Shorten out of the way later?
I was focused very much on Bronwyn Bishop, and how could you not be?
Good on you. Anthony Albanese, thank you very much for your time.
Good to be with you.
Go the Rabbitohs.